also have like direct conversations with myself. So like I named my negative voice Becky. And whenever I'm cognizant that that's who is controlling my thoughts, I have a chat with Becky and tell her to shut the heck up. And
It's effective.
it's very
Personifying your
effective.
negative self is
It is
awesome.
very effective because it
Wow.
just helps you separate like, wait a minute, those aren't my actual thoughts. Those are Becky's thoughts, and Becky can just go away right now.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining another show of Soul Inspired with Joe Borowski. Today, I'm super excited to have Cadence, Ann, and Stacy of Runaway Angel on the show. I wanted to have them on as soon as I started this podcast, and I'm excited to have the three of you join me. So thank you so much for taking the time to join the show.
Oh, thank
Thank
you so much for
you.
having us.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I wanted to take a different approach with this. I don't know how many interviews you guys have done. I know I've done a few. I'm sure you've done even more than me. And sometimes, depending who's interviewing you, it can seem a little stale. I don't want this to be stale. So I want this to feel like we're talking like musicians to musicians. Okay, that's where I'm gonna come from with this. So I bet a lot of times you're just approached right away as the three of you, but I'm going to start by asking an individual question, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So the question I'm going to ask first is for each of you, if there was something in particular that got you started in music in your life. So what was it that made you decide to get into music? We're getting away from where you're at right now, which is amazing, but go back to the very beginning. What inspired you? What excited you about getting into music, and how did you get there? And I wondered if the three of you could each answer that individually.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't even know what the answer is from like a spark perspective. But when I was 12, my dad and I went on a trip to Holland together, and he bought me a guitar. His uncle used to sell guitars, and came back and started taking lessons. But I think when you're like 12, I feel like we all have diaries, and I was like writing like poetry and like terrible, probably terrible songs. And so the guitar and the fact that Jewel was like at the time, a big hit as like a solo artist with a guitar, was a big inspiration for me. And then I started playing like for my elementary school classes, and we had a really cool teacher named Miss Giampa, when I was 7, all in that same time, who kind of like, took a liking to me and would teach me like cheater chords and stuff like that. So I don't know what sparked it, but that's what sort of ignited it from there.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I just always loved music. I grew up with parents who are into music. Both my dad and my stepdad are musicians. And I just started writing poetry, like same as Stacy, in like elementary school, grade 7, 8. I had a friend who like really got me into writing poetry. And from there, it started to kind of morph into songwriting. And yeah, I really originally wanted to get into musical theater. I was kind of like a musical theater geek, and that was kind of my dream. And I would go to all these auditions in Toronto trying to get into musical theater, and I never got anything. And then one day I saw like an ad to audition for this kind of deal that was being put together by this small label, and they were kind of trying to create like this second Avril Lavigne basically, and they were just looking for an artist to like fill the spot. And I went to the audition and I got signed, and that's kind of where the ball got rolling for me.
Wow.
Kind
Cool.
of similar, I guess. I didn't have so much poetry going on, but I was always writing little songs, always writing on the piano. Like, I don't know, I'd be like 4, writing melodies and things like that. Um, but I never saw it as a career opportunity. Like, I was always in bands and always singing at church and all the usual stuff. But I don't think it was until I saw an option in a program in high school. In Seneca had this independent music production program. So I was always steered into the sciences because my parents were scientists, and like something was like, oh, that's an option. You can do that, and that kind of, I quit all the other programs that I was going to go into and took the music direction. And that was definitely a moment, I think, that was steered me one way as opposed to like a big
I don't know, amalgamation of things.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny hearing the three of you talk about it. It came to you in different forms. So I got into music. It was such a personal thing to me when I started in music as a kid. I was a 10, 11-year-old kid, and I don't know if it's because I'm a boy and boys don't talk about their feelings. I have no idea. But I found this outlet that let me say what was going on inside. And I had a lot of things going on in my life. And I never looked at it as like a career. I was just like, this is so personal to me. I'm going to just do this. But it sounds like the three of you had influences kind of from the outside come in, which is kind of neat. Not to speak for the three of you, but it kind of sounded like that. Like you got your guitar and then you kind of went into you wanted to do the music theater. I went to Pearson, the art school in
Okay.
London, Ontario, and that gave me influence in music, but I really took it personal. Like I was like, this is like what I'm doing. Like this is just for me. So I don't know, did any of you feel that during those moments, or was this something like right away you're like, no, this is just part of being, a young girl. I'm gonna get into music because that's what I want. That's what I've been kind of either told to do, or I mean, I'm a teacher too, so I have students that show up. Their parents kind of said, "No, I want you to do something. So try guitar or try singing," and then it takes off. Or was this something that it just spoke to you young, like it felt natural and spoke to you?
Yeah, I would say it spoke to me. Like my dad did buy me a guitar, but prior to that, and kind of like sparked it in me. I was in like church choirs growing up, and nobody in my family was a musician. Like my uncle was in all my aunts and uncles were in Holland. So my parents weren't musicians and my siblings weren't musicians, but I was like always drawn to being in choir. So there was something inside of me that was drawing me to that, and I was very self-conscious and felt very alone on the farm. So music was very much like my outlet, but you had to try. I feel like you had to try a lot harder back then because I think there was one guitar teacher in the whole area, like West
Right.
Elgin, and no one, my parents didn't care. Like, oh, you want to take a guitar lessons? Okay. Oh, you want to quit? Okay. Like they
Right.
didn't matter
Okay.
to them.
Yeah.
So it was very much inside of me. Yeah. And I just couldn't ever let it go.
Yeah, I was like just born a ham, and I
You're
just
such a
always wanted
ham.
to be on stage performing, dancing, singing. I just grew up entertaining, and that's what I wanted to keep doing. In my mind, I had never really pictured myself as an artist. I'd always pictured myself as like being doing musical theater, and it wasn't until I like got signed to that first deal that I really kind of jumped right into the world of like being an artist. But because it was kind of like a pre-constructed deal, the songs were also already created, and like kind of like this look and this feel and like this brand that I was supposed to become was already conceptualized. So instead of like my first experience with music professionally being personal, it was very impersonal, and it was very much like you're going to become this person, and
Mm.
that's who you're going to be, and this is the music you're going to sing. And I just went along with it because I got to
It's
sign
an
a record deal,
opportunity.
and it
Yeah.
was seemed like a great opportunity. And yeah, but it
Yeah.
was yeah, it was very challenging to have that first intro to music be so impersonal, because I think it really made me struggle over the years to like find my own personal connection to music again. Yeah.
Um, I think I was maybe more similar to Stacy in the sense that it just felt super natural. Like I can't imagine not writing songs and not singing and not playing music. I definitely wasn't a ham. I was painfully shy. But it's just what I did. It's who I am. I write songs and I like to play music, and I always had tons of instruments, and I'd be like, oh, you know those old cassette tape where there'd be two and you record and you could record again and then press record and then keep switching them and add an instrument, add an instrument, add an instrument. Yeah, it wasn't until later that I was like, oh crap, I could actually maybe do this as a career. I just have to learn to stand in front of people a bit.
Nice. Yeah, again, hearing the three of you talk individually about your experiences is amazing. because it reminds me of me. I was not the ham either. I was the very shy kid, rashes going down my body day before first day of school, hiding behind my mom. Like I was a shy kid, and music was like my outlet. And I'll never forget the day where I was sitting in my room playing guitar and writing my one of my first songs, and I was singing it loud, and I forgot that I had my window open, and I ended the song, and my neighbors had all like they all came together. They're clapping, and I was angry. I was like, "Wait, what? Like that's not why I'm." And I shut my window. They were trying to support me, but I was like, "No, this is me. This is for me." It was very personal to me. So over the years, growing in the music industry, though, obviously, and I'm more independent. I've always been independent, but it was something where I had to learn to become more outgoing. I'm an outgoing introvert, as I would say, right? So, but Cadence, like you being the one that you're saying right away, you were the entertainer, like right away, you were entertaining everything. The reason I'm asking these questions is because even in my own music career at this point, I sometimes have to remember why I started doing it. I have to remember those Saturday mornings where I'd sit down, eating my cereal with my guitar and writing a song like that, why it was so exciting, like what was so exciting about using words to create an art, because you can get caught up in everything.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that you kind of were caught up early. And not saying I don't know your family history, I don't know any of that, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just saying it seemed like for you were already looking at it from an entertainment, like this is the route it's going. So you're right. I think for you it would probably be even more difficult to get back to that place of, hey, this is for me. This is my love, right? And I don't know, do you ever run into that?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I think the problem is everybody wants to give you their opinion. Everybody wants to help you. Everybody wants to guide you on the way. But when you're like a young, female growing up, it's hard not to take some of that advice and some of that direction in a way that leads you in the wrong direction. And for me, a lot of the messaging that I took like early on in my career, like signing a deal where it wasn't about me, it was about me being someone else. And like when I first, started working with the producer outside of that deal that I originally signed, and we started writing music together, it was like, oh, like you really need to start co-writing. And like to me, the message from that was like, you're not a good enough writer on your own. So like from then on, it was like everything I did was about like building this character, or like always writing with other people, because writing songs alone obviously didn't work for me. And so I really lost like that connection to like my own self and writing music for my own joy and any kind of like piece of me, like really early on. And I really didn't start trying to get that back until like after my transplant, like very recently. Like obviously I love writing with you guys, and I've loved the music that we've written together, but I I entirely stopped writing music alone. Like I basically didn't write a song solo for 10 years.
Wow.
Uh, and because I just lost like that connection to remembering that, like, oh, this is a release. Oh, this is healing. Oh, this is more than just a business. It's transcendent, but like you lose that connection, and it's hard to get it back.
Mhm.
I 100% agree. It as a musician, I think I always grew up saying, I started to understand because I went to a music school. And so everyone around me was musicians. And then I got out of elementary school and went, oh, nobody's a musician. Like I became this like person in high school that was the music person. And I started feeling like sorry for everyone. I was like, man, it must suck not to have self therapy. Like, cause like music to me was such self therapy. It was such a important piece. But I will say, I feel the same thing. There's been, I've gone, I'm last album I put out was 2000. 20, so we're going in 2024. Like, what just happened? And I've gone through some of the hardest years of my life the last couple of years, so it's weird how you can kind of get lost away from it with all kinds of other things, but coming back to it is important. And one of the ideas I've always had with the people I coach and things is just try to remember where you started, try to get back to where you started. But it takes work, and it takes your own isolation and your own time to like get back there and force yourself to start. And then all of a sudden you're excited and it's 2 hours later and you've written a song or whatever. Right. So just, I'm just putting it out there because I see it a lot. I see your story happen with that. And so I'm happy that you've acknowledged it, but obviously, and I'll get to what went on with you guys, but I was going to ask, so I've talked to the three of you individually. So just a brief, how did you come together? Because you said something, you said that you were writing solo, but then you were kind of, I don't know if you were advised or that'd be a good idea to co-write, to write with other individuals. Is that how the three of you came together? Or can you give me a little overview of how that happened?
A little bit. Like Cadence and I met at CMT, had a contest, and we were both in the top 10. We met there, and then we wrote a few songs after that. And
Yeah.
you and Anne had written songs. I didn't know Anne, but I really wanted to be in a trio. I was over being a solo artist. I was sick of the grind, and I wanted to experience the joy and the hardships with other people. And Cadence was like my first call, and I bugged you for a long time.
Stacy's persistence is the reason we're a band.
Yeah.
Nice.
Definitely messaged me a lot for quite some time until I finally was like, you know what? All right, let's give it a try. And
Persistence is the reason I probably
yeah,
accomplished everything in my life.
originally Stacy had another friend in mind that she was thinking of for the trio, and I was like, hold up, before we go that route, I want you to meet Anne because I think you guys would really jive. So we all got together at Stacy's sister's farm, and we wrote our first song
Our
together, which
Story.
was Our Story.
That was my first co-write.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You wait till this goes on, because I'm going to tell you, that's crazy that you just said that it was the first song you wrote, because I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. So you knew Anne. So Cadence, you knew Anne before Stacy knew Anne, and then the three of you got together. Is that right?
Yeah,
Cadence introduced us. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. You know what? Maybe I will talk about this now. Maybe this is a good offset. I'm really I'm just kind of a rebel when it comes to these podcasts. I don't need to make this like perfect, but I was gonna say I had just started listening to you guys. I mean, we didn't run into each other, but the only thing I ever seen that we've been part of was we were in an ending credits of the London Music Awards one year, and it was for Three Little Birds, I believe. It was like
Oh
a
yeah, yeah.
montage. Yeah, I was in that, believe it or not, at one point, and I heard the three of you and the harmonies between the three of you. And being a music coach and a vocal coach, like right away, I was like, "Whoa! Like that sounds so good!" Like it was like right away. I was like, "They sound so good." I was like showing everybody. I was like, Where did they come from?" Like I'm like, because I hadn't heard anything about you. So I was kind of, and I was intrigued by it, but you guys were so busy, and I was doing my own thing too. I thought there was no way we'll run into each other, but here we are. But I wanted to say, I never really sat down and listened to a lot of music. I'm just going to be totally honest with you. I've been on CMT. I came second in a CMT country music Chevy tailgate competition. I've never seen myself as a country artist. People label me that as, but I'm more, I think, like acoustic rock soul. But I think because I have a little bit of an edge, they throw me in the country category, and I think I can do country okay, but never really fit, in my own opinion, in that category. But those are all the contests that I'd always get into. I've only just listened to your guys' music in the last little bit, and the first song, and I went through like each song, okay? The first song that stuck to me, and I don't know why. It just was Our Story. And I had no idea that that was one of the first songs you ever wrote. But I mean, that totally, as soon as you said that, I don't know if you've seen my reaction. I was like, are you kidding me? I wrote down 5 songs, and I just wanted to share those with you that I was interested in. This is just for you to take away with. I don't know why these 5 stuck out. Obviously, I like Beach Please. Like that's it's been a fun release you guys just put out. Like that's really cool. Just from a fun standpoint, that's been really interesting to listen to. But the other 4 I kind of hit me was the Our Story. I was interested and this is what's funny, and I don't know if it's my independent ways, like if I find every time I find one I liked, I'm like, oh, it's one of the lower viewed. Like I'm like, why are these not as popular? But if you only knew,
Mm-hmm. We love that one.
Run to You.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really liked the outlaw sound of Tumbleweed. Like
Yeah.
it has like this like outlaw country vibe that I was like, how is this one not like booming? Like I was kind of shocked, to be honest. So those are the ones that hit me. And so then I went and listened to your popular ones, which were great songs. That's not to take away that they're great songs. Obviously they're doing good. But I was like, why are these other ones sitting with me? Now, you may or may not have heard my music. Mine's very soulful, kind of raw. I grew up, my favorite album growing up was Unplugged New York with Nirvana. So I have that raw sound. And I actually met Jewel. You mentioned Jewel. I met her when I was like 16. I gave her one of my demos, and it was the most uncomfortable experience I've ever had because I was like in love with her. And she just kind of made this comment, like, you know, because I ran up to her and I said, I admire you. Can you take my album? Like, it didn't make any sense. And she said, yeah, sure. And I thought, oh, I hope she doesn't use it as a coaster, but it was like on a CD, right?
Yeah.
But she did acknowledge something later on in life. Like she tweeted me on Twitter and stuff a few times and stuff. So it was really cool, but big influence in her. So I really like the rawness. Maybe, I don't know if that has anything to do with these songs that I heard, but yeah, Our Story stood out. So I can see why that was one of your first ones.
I would say the ones that you chose are more like songwriter driven.
Yeah. And
Even
definitely
Beach
like
Please, even though it's a bop, it's like
all of those
well
except
written.
for Beach Please are like songs that I wish that we'd released for sure. Like if we had infinite amounts of resources to continuously
Keep
release
throwing songs
singles,
in the
like
universe.
would have loved to release
And
those
sometimes we
ones.
wonder, like, who cares about the rule book anymore? Like, let's re-release Tumbleweed. Let's make a video for it. Why not, right?
Yeah, because like I was listening through those and I was like, they're really good, and I had never heard them. So but anyway, so I just wanted to let you know about those. So now I know you guys got together. The rest is history. Obviously, did you get signed right away, or was it kind of an independent thing you did for a while?
We're
You've
still
never been
independent.
signed,
We've
yeah.
never been signed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So have
We
you
have,
been?
We've had management.
like a digital deals
Yeah,
and stuff
we've
like
had
that.
we've had management deals, and we've had some assistance from Olay, now Anthem. They were my publishing company many moons ago before we got signed, so they gave us some assistance with like our YouTube channel and stuff in the beginning. But we've always been, yeah, fully indie. And it's funny, when we always joke that when we first got together, we jokingly said we'd give it 2 years, and if we didn't get signed, we'd call it quits. And 10 years later, we still haven't gotten signed, and we still haven't called it quits. So guess we were wrong.
So you're under kind of an umbrella of a management company though, right? Because I think I found you on a page where it showed a number of different artists, and you were listed as one of them. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do have a manager right now. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of who kind of helps you out a little bit here and there and pushes you, but you're not signed to a label. You've been
No.
independent the whole time.
And booking, we've did all our tours, like we played Europe,
Everything.
we did
Stacey
everything
literally
ourselves.
planned an entire tour for us in Europe alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's my persistent.
That's wild. That's wild. Do you prefer it that way, or would you have at some point rather?
Not at all.
No.
It's a lot of work, and
It's a
we
lot of
would
work.
rather be artists. We would rather
Yeah.
write. We would rather have time for that. It takes a lot of time. I'm sure you can understand. To Cadence like builds our websites, for example. Like I was doing a lot of the booking stuff. Anne was doing a lot of social media. So it was like that was all time that took away from us just like enjoying writing songs. So no, I think I can speak for all of us that we wish we
Had a team. Yeah.
team since the beginning. I think we'd be, I don't want to say further ahead, but like, you know, we would have been able to write more songs for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. It's challenging when like all you want to do is create, but what you're really doing is spending your time creating stuff that doesn't matter to you. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, even TikTok really, since like we took my break for cancer and then came back, it was like TikTok became this huge thing that everyone was expected to be a part of and to take part in. And it's like just the amount of time it takes to create content for all of these additional apps like takes away from the amount of time that we get to spend like just creating music, getting better at writing, getting better at playing, getting better at performing. Like it takes away from those things that are most important to us.
So then something always suffers, right?
Right.
We have lots of content. We don't have any time to play guitar.
Yeah.
So-
Right.
So from a deeper level, when you get to that place, what do you guys do? When you get upset, when you feel like just kind of done, like what do you do?
Well, I think that's the bonus in like having 3 people. You don't have to like, you're not alone in it. We can discuss it. We can cry on each other's shoulders. We can get each other through it.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a place now where we're doing it for the love of it over and above, you know, grinding or trying to get signed or trying to reach these goals necessarily. They would all just be like bonuses, I think. We just don't
Right.
want to give up making music because we love making music and we love making music together.
Right. So you just lean.
Find that we feel better when we're together. Like we live fairly far apart. We have very busy lives, and you internalize all the angst. Like we want to just perform, and this is getting so stressful. Why are we doing this again? But then you get together, and when we're actually physically together, I find we feel infinitely better about everything. You're like, oh yeah, this is why we're doing it, and we're
Yeah.
all just as
Oh,
irritated.
yeah, I love you guys.
We should do this more often. See you
Yeah.
in a month.
Right. So coming back together helps you lean on one another to feel supported in everything you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it is easy to get discouraged and then forget why you're doing it.
Oh, so
This
easy.
this is the challenge of having a career in music is it's an art, it's a love, it's a passion. And you have to somehow be able to stay with it and build a business. And so that's what I get from a lot of people I've talked to who are independent artists. So I get it, I feel it, I understand it. But then I have a lot of gratitude that I have it because there's a lot of people that don't have an outlet. They don't have that. And it's a lot harder on them when they face challenges. And this is probably a good segue to, I think it was 2019, you went through a battle, I think it was leukemia, from what I read. So was that like a quick thing that happened fast, or did you know it was happening?
Oh no, that was not quick. It was
Right.
the farthest thing from quick. I mean, I thought it was going to be quick. Originally, when I was diagnosed with like a highly treatable form of leukemia. But ultimately, the treatments just were not successful for me, and I had to have a bone marrow transplant. And, you know, in my mind, I thought like, oh, I'm young and healthy and I'm just going to have my transplant and I'll be back at work in 6 months. And in my mind, I thought my hair would grow back in like a year and I'll just be like, everything will be normal in a year. And no, that was not even remotely how it happened for me. I had just like pretty much every complication imaginable after my transplant. And I mean, I literally still just had like my right hip replaced and my left hip like revised in January. So, I mean, I'm 4 years out of my transplant and I'm still struggling with kind of like the fallout from it all, but I'm alive and I lost a lot of cancer friends along the way who weren't as lucky as I am. So in many ways, even though it took infinitely longer than we all wanted, it turned out okay. I'm here.
Absolutely. And did you, when that happened, were you in a place? I always wonder with when we're facing those type of serious situations, and I've had friends. I actually recently lost a close friend, and was there a lot going on in your life in regards to high amounts of stress or anything that you can look back now and you've changed anything, or is this just something that came out of nowhere? You think it's just a random thing that happens? Like, have you had any perspective change on that? And I know that's a personal question, but because some people are in different places when something like this comes up, like a
Yeah.
serious illness or whatnot.
I mean, definitely I was struggling with some stuff emotionally, and some really high anxiety at the time that I often wondered whether it like contributed to the fact that I got cancer at all. Um, but like in terms of like whether it changed my perspective, it did, but in two different points along the way. Initially, my perspective immediately shifted to like what is important, what really matters, like just seeing the beauty in everything, just really appreciating every moment with my family and friends, and just feeling the magnitude of what really mattered. But at the same time, it also like triggered this kind of realization where you recognize all of the things in your life that you regret, especially the things that you didn't do. And it made that regret really bitter and like intense. So just living with like those regrets. And then, I really thought that it was going to take kind of that attitude forward, that I was just going to treasure things so much more and be such a grateful person. But what really happened is, at the end of the 4 years of struggle, I was left with incredibly severe PTSD. And I've just been doing like a lot of really hard work in therapy trying to work through that. And what it's left me with is, instead of like this great sense of recognizing what matters and seeing the meaning in everything, it's like I don't see meaning in anything anymore, and I've lost kind of that meaning in things. And
Mm.
it's made things really weird for a while for me, because all of, these things that I used to identify as being so important, like how I looked and how I dressed and always looking perfect and always having my hair and makeup done, and just so many things that you recognize, like all of these things are shallow, none of these things matter, and they take up so much of my time and energy. And it just really shifted how I saw a lot of things. And some of those things were things that I identified as a part of my identity and my personality. And so to suddenly lose the meaning in those things, it almost made me lose a connection with myself entirely. And that's just what I've been trying to work to build back, is what do I really love? Who am I? And what do I want to do with this life that I have now?
Mm.
And how am I going to shape that into something that will bring me meaning and purpose again?
Thank you for being real there. I have, since I was 16 and upward, been absolutely obsessed, for some very bizarre reason, obsessed with near death experiences. One of the reasons I've opened this podcast is because I am going to be interviewing people who've passed, come back, and had their experiences. Um, and one resemblance that you just mentioned was this idea of the identity of a loss of ego. So our ego is what creates us to want to look perfect and be this image that is accepted by others. And I can understand why you would go through that, what you went through, and came back and realized how shallow that is. And yet so many people around you, as much as they want to understand you, won't. And it doesn't, because they're not going through it. And they might have a moment where they understand you, but then they're back to their ego, because that is just naturally, as a human, I think we're all accustomed to that. That's just the reality. We get lost in it. Even as children, we all want to be wearing the best shoes. We all want to be having that, like everything has to be in line with that. So when you go through something like what you went through, and I'm, I haven't gone through what you've gone through, so I can't completely understand. But what I would say is, you mentioned how there was this idea that nothing mattered. I think you said something like that. Um, I know this sounds bizarre to say as well, but I would see it, what you went through is almost such a blessing, because you have a different lens on. You're seeing things from a completely different perspective, you know? Um, and I think you could continue, and I bet you are going to find the beauty in that.
Oh, yeah, like for me, I'm a very science-minded person, and from a logical point of view, like I can fully recognize why I needed to go through what I went through, why how what I went through changed me fundamentally in a way that never would have happened otherwise, but desperately needed to happen. um but like that realization also comes with like this other realization of recognizing that like the person that you thought you were for your entire life, that you've been portraying to everyone else for your entire life, like isn't a real person and doesn't really exist, and there isn't anything behind that shell.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have to kind of start from scratch to like really rebuild, like who am I actually, like what is my identity when I remove this outer influence, when I remove this need to be perfect, when I remove these needs to like look this way or be this way or act this way, like who am I actually when I stop acting and like being what I think everyone else wants me to be, who is that person? And like that's a really scary, empty kind of blank slate to start with when you're my age, to realize that like, you know, I'm the girl that nobody knows, even though so many people think they know me. Like I don't even know me, and how could
Mm-hmm.
anyone else? Because I don't even really know who I am. I'm just being who I think I need to be in each situation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it was a really challenging realization, because I realized, and I am very grateful for what I went through. It changed a lot of things for me. My life is so different now, and it wouldn't look this way if I didn't get cancer. But at the same time, it also completely stripped away my identity, you know, in so many more ways than one. I mean, not just like, you know, losing my career and my job and all of that at once, but like also losing like my physical mobility, losing my physical appearance. You know, at one point, like on the steroids, I gained like 100 pounds in 8 months. And so just to lose all of these things that I had so tightly like associated with my identity, to have
Mm-hmm.
them like, fully stripped away, and then to be left with like, what is left, like who am I behind all of these things? Like it's really life altering. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just talking to you. I'm so sorry to you
Oh
too.
no, no, please.
But this is really fascinating to me. And because you mentioned you're a science driven type person, I could tell that right away. And that's great. I have many friends who are on that side of things. And I'm like the yogi spiritual Joe friend that is like the opposite, who I'm like not here all the time. So, and I've had to understand that both work together, that both are so important. Having the idea of the science of who we are and everything behind it, but then also what we don't know, and to understand that we don't know everything. And, you know, when I talk to people,
Quantum science is still science.
oh, absolutely. And that's what's, no, exactly. I was just going to say that is it coming together. Do you understand what I mean? What I mean is, if we get caught up in, so I'm going to jump to this again for a moment, but from what it sounds like is you were Cadence, part of Runaway Angel 2018, and you were before that, up until your whole life you were that person. And then you come down with this illness and get very sick and have to find the power in you to get through it. And I'm sure you had love and support all around you to help you with that. And you got through it, and now you're back, and now you're supposed to be the same person.
Yeah.
I think that's impossible. If I'm being totally honest with you, I don't know how you would do that, because you're right. You would be stripped of so much of who you thought you were. And now you have to rebuild who you are. But then the question is, do we really know who we are? Because how many people get lost in this world, get signed to a major record deal, get at the top of the charts, and then everything goes wrong, or there's something very dramatic happens. And you go, why would they do that? They were who they wanted to be, who they were. But we don't know who we are. So I'm just saying, and again, I haven't gone through what you've gone through. So I have tons of, this is why I have the compassion for it. It's the same thing when I talk to people who have passed and had these crazy experiences and come back, and I say, wow, you're so lucky. And they're like, no, because I don't want to be here. Or they have all these different perspectives of things. But, you know, so many of us are just doing our thing.
Mhm.
We're just doing our thing, and we think we're doing what's best, and we're being Joe Borowski, or we're being whoever. And then one day we go, am I really happy with who I am? Why do I not feel right? Whereas you've gone through something you almost know why you don't feel right. Meaning, if someone says, do you need to look like this? You're like, no, I don't. Because now you've gone through what it feels like in a different way. That's all I'm trying to say, is that I feel like that is where the blessing can be.
Yeah, it's this weird dichotomy between like desperately wanting to cling on to anything that resembles my old life, because like I just still grieve the loss of that like so much, but at the same time like desperately wanting to like reclaim whatever is still there and build some kind of new life that has meaning and purpose for me. So there's still like parts of me that like miss my old life and my old body and my everything about what my life was like before my transplant. Like I miss that every day. I'm never going to not miss that. But like part of healing is accepting what's happened to you and who you are now. And the only thing I can do is just keep taking like one step forward and trying to find peace with that.
So that's perfect. So you're basically at this point trying to keep some of who you are, but grow as the new person that you are as well.
Yeah, it's like as much as I recognize how shallow so many of those things were and how silly they were, they also were so important to me. They were
Mm-hmm.
like a really huge part of me. And so even though I can still grieve losing those things, I can also recognize like those things didn't really serve me the way that I thought they did. So even though I still see that they had value then, I can recognize that like they're not serving me now.
I do think that part of us being here is to play. We're playing. We're in a
Yeah.
play. You're in theater. We're in a play. And so there's nothing wrong with still having some ego. I think that if you don't, the lack of ego, I think it's very difficult to live any kind of normal life if you have no ego whatsoever. It would be very difficult. With both Stacey and Ann, like if you two, when you were going through that, right, were you just there as support systems for Cadence? Like, is that what you would, how did you, how did you two keep it together? Because I imagine that would have been difficult for you two as well.
It was difficult, but I think the interesting thing about Cadence, well, maybe not interesting, but one of the beautiful things about Cadence is she's so smart, and your approach to your treatment was you would have like binders there, and she would just like take all of the information and like keep notes and then study it. And she knew so much about what was happening in her own body that she was able to share it with us and her family. And so that really helped us to understand exactly what she was going through, because she could understand what she was going through. And it was incredibly hard because you have this friend and you know who you love and you just want to see be happy. And there was times that we didn't know if she would survive. It was incredibly difficult, and all you can do is be there for your friend and you know, give you positive messages and kind of keep you
Yeah.
up, and yeah, be there as much as possible. I don't really know what else you could do. I mean, if we were ever on the other side of it, you would know exactly what to do for us. You know what you needed, right?
Yeah.
But and then I think everyone's different. Like you shared your story a lot, and I think it was very cathartic for you to do that. I think personally, if I was going through it, I probably would have been in like a little bubble where I didn't talk to anyone, and that's how I deal with things.
Yeah.
Right.
So
You can tell from my silence for the last year that I got to a point where sharing my story became too difficult. It became something that like no longer felt healing for me and instead felt like so vulnerable that I just couldn't push
Mhm.
through it to like share anymore. And a lot of that is just going through like the therapy I'm going through and just making like so many self realizations and self changes. But it just became way too much to continue to like share those parts of me publicly, because it was like, okay, you've all been with me. Thanks for the support. Thanks for sharing in my story. And now I'm just going to close the door and go in my own little world and work on the things I need to work on and try to emerge happy.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing it here. I know that I don't know if you've taken a break from sharing this story. Um, and I can't imagine, going through that and then that being the story that people want to talk to you about all the time and things like that, could be frustrating at times as well. But the beauty is you are here and you got through something so difficult. That's really interesting that you were so aware of your body. I guess that is the science driven mind of you to know what was going on. That's pretty awesome because I don't
Just
know, like,
maintaining control over a situation that I had absolutely no control over. It was just a way of tricking my own mind into feeling like I had some semblance of control. Yeah.
right. And so it didn't change you in any way though, in regards to like your belief systems or anything, if you don't mind me asking that.
It made me recognize how like useless fear is. Like my entire
Mm.
life prior to my transplant was dictated by fear, fear of what people would think, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of literally everything. I mean, fear just controlled my life. So it still does. I mean, I kind of hoped cancer would just be like this magic friggin' switch and I would just be like, oh yeah, no, I'm afraid of nothing now.
Right.
But like, you know, in some ways I'm more afraid than ever, but now I really diligently try hard to like swallow that fear and do it anyways, because like that taste of regret, like I just never want to taste that again, never. So if there's something that I want to do but fear is stopping me from doing it, like F it, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah. And I talk about that a lot on the podcast is how fear comes in and it takes over. And then it doesn't, you have to like talk yourself out of it a little bit, right? And how much of that is from our imprint growing up and all these different things, like you just fear everything. And I'm at a point now in my life as well now where if it feels good, I mean, to an extent, to an extent, but if it feels good and I know that it's going to benefit other people, it could even benefit one person in my life, I'm not going to question things. You just do it if it feels right, because fear will come in and say, "Oh, you're not going to get the people following you. You're not going to get, you know." And I don't understand where that comes from. I think that's part of this whole mission I'm trying to find out. I feel like I'm doing this podcast to talk to as many people as possible to see if they can figure it out for me, because why is fear so much in all of our lives about everything?
Just because the marketing that we're exposed to from literally every angle is achievement based. It's all about like, what are you doing? What are you achieving? Are you successful? Are you making money? Are you
Hustle,
pretty?
hustle,
Are you
hustle.
happy? Like hustle, grind, like do the work. It's all about achievement and it's not about being. It's not
Mhm.
about creating. It's not about existing. It's like, you know, I like the I'm a human being, not a human doing, you know? Like, why is
Right.
it always about doing
Well, that's a
things?
whole other conversation.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we live in that society.
Yeah.
And on the other side, we have so many. How many times in your life have you heard about consequences? If you do this, this might happen. If you do that, that might happen. So it's automatic. Every time we think about anything now, this could happen, that could happen, but it could also just not, you
Yeah.
know? So
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, we never think backwards. We never think, oh, look where we are now. Good thing and that happened to get us there. But in those moments, we might have been fearing it, but yet we didn't, and we're now here because of it. So, and I don't think there's any wrong decisions outside of harming someone. I think because we're growing as humans, we're just all growing. For the three of you, if you're going through those moments, do you just kind of like, do you have all different forms of things that you do? Like some people are into meditation, yoga, running. Like, do you have your own way of rebalancing yourselves?
From fear?
Yeah, from fear, getting lost in, oh, is this working? Should I stop? Should I quit? Runaway Angel? Should I whatever?
I I don't know where it started, but I personally don't really overthink things. I did my yoga teacher training actually when I was 19, and I think that's the best decision I ever made, and every 18-year-old girl should do it, or guy.
Stacy's definitely the chillest person I know,
Yeah,
other than my husband.
I really don't overthink things. If I have like something like that creep into my mind, I'm just like, get out of here. Like there's worse places I could be in the world. There's whatever. So,
Right.
um, but I mean, in the same breath, like I in my life have been like scared to move to Nashville and like scared to like achieve, and there's sometimes fear in those aspects where it's like a really big jump. But the little day to day stuff, I'm pretty good at just do it. And it takes a minute. Usually you overthink it for 2 months and then the task takes 5 minutes and
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God, why didn't I just
Yeah,
do that?
just the amount of time you spend
Yeah.
agonizing.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, you know me. I tend to either go on some kind of insane hike or like I need to reset myself. I need to be alone and challenge myself and remind myself that I'm powerful and capable and like I need to achieve something and it has to be alone. So I like to either go to my cabin by myself and just be because there's no signal, no electricity. So you have to just be with yourself, do whatever feels right in the moment, really physically challenge myself, like that 100-kilometer thing I did in like 3 days.
Wow.
But it resets me, and I feel way more in tune with myself and in line with my needs and who I am after those things. That's just me. It's a lot more, maybe more dramatic than it should be, but
Then
it
you go back to
helps.
Toronto and you're like,
Yeah,
ah.
but I feel way more centered and capable afterwards
Yeah.
for a day or two.
Nice. And Cadence, same thing? Just
Yeah, I was a runner before my transplant. I definitely did like my best thinking when I was running, and I don't run anymore, but I do still work out. And usually my best thinking happens when I'm outside walking in nature. But I also have like direct conversations with myself. So like I named my negative voice Becky, and whenever I'm cognizant that that's who is controlling my thoughts, I have a chat with Becky and tell her to shut the heck up. And
It's effective.
it's very
Personifying your
effective.
negative self is
It is
awesome.
very effective because it
wow.
just helps you separate like, wait a minute, those aren't my actual thoughts. Those are Becky's thoughts, and Becky can just go away right now.
I love that. I've never ever had anybody tell me they have a person that like a named personality. That's a really good idea. Was this something you were always doing, or is this
No,
just
one of
this is
my
new?
friends introduced me to this like right before my transplant, and it was like probably one of the most like effective therapeutic things that I've ever done to separate like the negative self-talk and the negative like mind kind of thoughts that happen from like who I am as a person and what I want as a person, because I'm a very shame driven person. So previously those like negative thoughts would just create feelings of shame for me because like why can't I overcome them, or why am I thinking these things, or what's wrong with me? And instead now I'm able to just separate me from the thoughts and say like, okay, Becky, like you can just go. And like my husband knows that that's the name of my negative voice as well, so my husband will also be like, well, that sounds a lot like Becky right now, and like it's
Nice.
great. Sometimes I just need like the external check from somebody else to be like, oh, that sound an awful lot like something Cadence would say, and then it draws you back into your own power.
That's the beautiful thing about being in 2023, because if this was like, 1903 and you had Becky talking to you, you'd
Oh, yeah.
you'd probably have to go into like a white room.
Yeah.
We all
Yeah.
we'd be screwed.
We're already musicians, so we're already in a different place that way. But we're getting near the end of this. I usually end the talks with just asking if I can get all of you to answer this. And it's kind of a heavy question, but it really is just pretty simple. And I'm interested if all three of you will answer this different, or if you'll copy each other, or what you'll do. But the question is, from your perspective, what are we doing here? What is this? Why are we here? And I'm gonna before you answer that question, the reason I ask this question is because here we are talking, right? We're talking, and there's a part of us that's got this. We're trying to be professional. But really, like, what are we doing? Like, what is the point of everything? Like, do you ever get like lost in that? Like, what are we doing? Like, what is,
Four,
you
two,
know? And you don't want to get too lost in that, because then you don't live. But the point is that the real question is, if you can look at it from a perspective of loving each other, or whatever this is, like whatever we're doing here, why are we here? What is our ultimate purpose of being here?
I think like love, connection, and empathy. Like to me, those are the things that stand out, is that it's like we're here to love each other, we're here to give each other empathy, and we're here to connect with each other. I read somewhere once that the purpose of life is to have relationships with as many people as humanly possible. And I always thought that that was kind of weird. And then my transplant happened and just made me reflect on so many things. And I realized, like, I think that that is very true, that it's the connections we make with each other, like the real connections where we see each other's vulnerability, where we see each other's faults, where we see each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we see our own humanity reflected in someone else's humanity. I think that's why we're here, is to just continue to mirror humanity to each other.
I love that.
You know, it's kind of weird, but
No, that's really good.
No.
Yeah, connection. The word connection in itself can mean a lot of different things. It can mean with other people, but it could also mean with a tree, you know, and like
Yep.
true connection kind of drives everything. Makes sense to me.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about this a lot in my life, but I will say that I don't think humans are living the way that we're supposed to be living. I don't think we're supposed to be obsessed with technology. I don't think that we're supposed to be in this type of school system. I don't think we're supposed to be in this type of money-driven society. And I think the reason why people find themselves asking these questions compared to 300 years ago when you just survived is that we're just bombarded with everything. And, you know, back to the ego, like people have larger and larger egos because of social media and because of the need to prove themselves to themselves or to other people. And so I think we're on this earth to reach nirvana, but we just don't realize it because nobody's living in a cave meditate, well, people are, but in general nobody's meditating and just trying to reach God or reach the universe or reach the greater being that you know, that surrounds us, because we've gone totally to the left. We're
Right.
where I think we are in life. I don't think this is supposed to be our lives, and I think it's like a pendulum.
yeah.
And it's going to get really, really crazy with AI and social media and technology and blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
hopefully so many people start turning their back on it because they had enough, that it kind of swings back down to the center. And we can live in this world where we have these things at our fingertips, but we're not hyper focused on them. We're not putting on the VR when to walk in a forest, when we can literally just step outside and be one with ourselves and be one with nature and find connection.
Wow. Those were all really good. I didn't expect them to be so good. Just kidding. I thought that'd be great. I really liked how you said that. Why are we it's almost like, why are we even asking that question? Because you're right. I think if we were doing things in a way that was in alignment with who we are, we just, right.
Then we wouldn't even need to ask this question because we would just be.
Right. Right. I guess
What do I know?
no, but it really incites a lot of thoughts, because, you know, the real hope is that we're going through this to realize that.
Yeah. I think we need to recapture like our sense of community as a whole in the world. Like, I'm not a huge like supporter of organized religion, but I genuinely can see that like the loss of organized religion through time has also created like a loss of community. And I think that like loss of community and that connection to our neighbors and our friends and our fellow people from town and getting to see people and knowing what's going on with people and supporting people, like I think that's all really taken like a huge hit from just the way that technology has changed how we live and how we interact. And I think we really need to recapture that sense of community to find kind of that sense of wholeness that we all feel like we're missing.
We're so stressed out as a society. Like, I moved back to the country, so I'm back in West Elgin, and you know, it's just different here. Like, maybe your neighbor has chickens and you're growing butternut squash and you switch, you know what I mean? Whereas I just find in the city type communities, you're so stressed out about money and rent and buying groceries and everything's so expensive. But you move out here to the farm and it's like, man, we're just growing in our backyard. Like,
Right.
you kind of have that community and that connection as long as you open yourself up to it. So I just think society thinks we're so advanced, but we're not.
But we're not. It almost works against us in a way. I totally get that. One final question to you all. from a positive standpoint, you think about all the things you've gone through, right? All the things, the ups and downs of your career as Runaway Angel. And I'm sure, and I hope that I'll have a lot of listeners tuning in who are young musicians or just getting in the industry and things like that, right? What is something, or what is some final words of wisdom that you can give anyone, that would encourage people in any way to keep doing what you're doing? Because you're obviously together. I don't know if you guys are going to be going over any music today or what you're doing together, but like, you're obviously still connected, and that's the beauty of it. What kind of, do you have any words of wisdom or anything that you can give anyone?
I would say ask lots of questions if you're first starting out, for example. I think we know the answers. We can find the answers on YouTube, but it's really good to find a mentor, find people you can connect with, because the thing is there's no point in going up the ladder if you can't put your hand back down and help the next person up. Right. So I think there are a lot of people out there, ourselves included, who would happily give people advice or give them a connection or whatever. So you don't have to go on the journey alone. Find yourself a community that you can that you get along with, that you can help each other out.
Yeah. And like for me, I think it's just like creating relationships, right? Like we all think that we all misunderstand what networking is in the beginning of our career. We think that it's like going out and being seen and sharing our elevator pitch and trying to prove to people that we're good enough. But like, it's really has nothing to do with that. It's about genuinely investing in the people in your industry and getting to know them and supporting them and learning about their families and what they're interested in. It's about building real, actual relationships that can sustain outside of the industry. And like, that's what networking is. So like, go out there, go to events, meet people, introduce yourself.
Make
Don't
friends.
sell yourself, just make friends. Just be a good hang.
Yeah.
I like that.
No, it's kind of cliche, but I would say be yourself. In this, we're way too focused on constant content right now. People are just racking their brains coming up with new things, but like if you're not authentic and it doesn't feel right, like it's not going to come across properly. So like create quality art that feels right to you. And when I say be authentic, also like if you're not being authentic and you meet somebody, if you're not in tune with yourself, you're not going to get the spidey senses, that somebody's in it for the wrong reasons. You're not going to trust your gut when it comes to meeting people too. Trust yourself, be yourself. And like, that'll help you keep people in your circle that are the right people. It'll help you stay authentic, because what's the point of making music if it's not yours, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think people can tell when you're not being genuine. I think that really you're not an approachable person. You're not an accessible person when you're not being a real person. So just be you. It's hard to do in this business when everyone's telling you who to be and what you should do and what you should try and what you should change, but like just ignore all of that and just
Right.
be you.
It doesn't mean that you can't be fun, because I mean, I would say Beach Please is still us.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like super fun and like
Yeah.
whatever. We wrote it in a couple hours and it just like spilled out of us. So you don't
Yeah.
have to be like super folky or like take your poem from your page and sing it. That's not what we mean.
let it feel right.
Yeah, let it feel right. Exactly.
That's perfect. No, I mean, I thought you were making fun of me for a second because I'm kind of folky, but no, I'm just kidding. But I think what it ultimately comes down to is all the parts of you coming out, because we're not just one part. Like I have some songs that are really depressing. Like, don't listen to that in the wrong headspace. I have some songs that are just fun. I have some songs that have that kind of like edge to it, right? So but it has to be you. Don't do it because you're trying to get someone to like it, because you're right, it doesn't come out right, and I don't think people buy into it. And I think as humans, we're all a lot smarter than we give other people credit for. We'll know right away, oh, that doesn't sound like you guys, or something like that. So where are you guys now? Like where can people find you? What are you up to now? You've done the Beach Please song. Are you just kind of refocusing now, or is there lots coming up?
Writing.
Writing lots, yeah. We're just trying to figure out what our next single is going to be. We've got lots of good contenders, so this is going to be a spicy debate.
It always is.
It always is. But I think yeah, we're just doing lots of writing and just trying to reconnect and rebuild that spark and that fire that was burning so bright, before we had to take our break.
Awesome. Well, maybe this talk today will incite
Yes, this
some
is very good. This
ideas
is very
Thank you so
inspiring.
much.
Yeah.
of where your next song is going to go. Where do people find you online?
Runawayangelmusic.com.
It's runawayangel.com.
Runawayangelmusic.com.
Runawayangelmusic.com. You on Instagram, everything else, right? You're on all the socials, I'm assuming.
All the
Things. Yeah.
All the things. Awesome. Well, thanks for like spending the time with me and talking and just having this raw conversation. That's really what I wanted. So I love you guys for it. Thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. So for everybody that's been listening in, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you next time on Soul Inspired.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
So